This is TC35PM media packaging. Now, what's not mentioned here, but is probably important to you, is IMF, the interoperable master format. And most of the work in this group is feeding into IMF. So we're looking at file wrappers, interchange, OPLs, and essentially we're looking at ways in which we can interchange content in a standardized way. I'm not going to dig into IMF too much because I suspect we'll get some questions about it.
Sure.
But this is the work that's going on.
Maybe one thing to you could comment on is I mean, is it safe to use IMF today, as it's only a draft publication and not a standard per se? I mean, for a start, can you explain to people what a draft publication means?
Oh, okay. So what basically happens is that the study group will report its recommendations, and then we form an ad hoc group who effectively draft the standard. Then that goes out to ballot. So this is everybody's opportunity to read that standard, tweak it if they feel it doesn't really meet the requirements that they have. These groups are literally just interested individuals who are members of SMPTE who register to join the group, and then they get together. The meetings can be quite frequent. Towards the end of a standard, they're probably every week. People don't necessarily turn up to every meeting, but essentially the meeting is a forum for you to decide to put your point of view across. Like, I might have a different requirement for how I want to do 3D subtitling to the next guy. And so if I want to make sure that my requirements are included in the standard, or at least I understand how the standard's going to be formed, then I would want to participate in those groups. It's very difficult if you get the standard in hand and go, well, that doesn't fit our workflow, or we can do stuff that's cleverer than that, so why isn't it in the standard? Well, if you participate, you can get that stuff into the standard. So once it's at draft stage, what we're saying is that largely the standard is complete. This is the opportunity for people to kind of fine-tune it. Now, to your point about IMF, well, IMF is getting towards a point where we can start to use it. Now, I actually have used, with my other hat on, my Technicolor hat, I've used IMF in my workflow, and I find it to be really useful. My issue with it right now is that I don't know the IMF I'm using will actually be still usable. Like, if I use it as my mezzanine, put that into long-term archive, and then pull it back out in 2 years' time, I don't know that it will be fully compatible with IMF as it will be when it's complete. Now, I will still be able to read it, so I could convert it to another version of IMF, if you like. But essentially, yes, you can use it, but what I would say is I wouldn't be relying on it as an archive format, because we don't know what the, for instance, what the encoding format's going to be. It might be JPEG 2000 at high bitrate, probably H.264, probably support H.265, maybe all three, and then you take your pick. But what we don't want with IMF is that it becomes another MXF where there are so many flavors of it that you can't interchange it at all.
So to keep it short, probably a working format, or work in progress type of format, or an interchange format, and maybe later down the line as an archive format.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know some fairly big studios, for instance, are already using are building their archive on the basis it's not IMF wrapped right now, but they can go back to that archive. It's all file based, and they can then IMF wrap the essence that they've already encoded. So all they've got to do is go back and apply the metadata and wrap the essence. So they are looking. Some of the big Hollywood studios, for instance, are looking to move their whole archive to IMF as soon as that's ready. But I know, well, certainly there's at least one manufacturer in the room that supports IMF in its current sort of draft form. But I also know that their version of IMF is not compatible with the version I'm using with a different manufacturer. So that's a good example of where the draft form is a little bit dangerous. It's fine if I've got a single manufacturer workflow, but if I'm going across different pieces of equipment, then yeah, that's where we need to get the standard finished again, so that the manufacturers can be confident going out and doing that development work.